Captain Elena Rodriguez wiped grease from her hands as she finished the pre-flight check on her cargo hauler, the Iron Sparrow. The ship wasn't much to look at, a battered freighter that had seen better decades, but she knew every bolt, wire, and circuit in its hull. Around her, the massive orbital station buzzed with activity, as various alien species conducted their business. "Another milk run," she muttered, reviewing the manifest. "Medical supplies to the mining colony on Kepler 442c. Simple enough, though the route would take her through some sketchy space near the neutral zone. At the docking bay's control center, she noticed a commotion. A group of Zephyrian diplomats stood arguing with station security, their crystalline features flickering with agitation. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and cold logic, but these ones looked genuinely worried. "The Celestial Harmony hasn't responded to our communications for 6 hours, one of them was saying, his voice carrying that musical quality all Zephyrians possessed. Ambassador Kethvar was supposed to report in after passing through the Sigma Drift. Elena paused her loading procedures. The Celestial Harmony was the Zephyrian flagship, a massive diplomatic vessel that housed not just ambassadors, but some of the most brilliant minds in their civilization. If something had happened to it, what's their last known position? She found herself asking. The Zephyrian turned toward her, his large multifaceted eyes studying her with obvious disdain. "This is not a concern for human cargo operators. The Galactic Council will handle this matter." Elena shrugged and continued loading her supplies. She'd heard that tone before from countless alien species who viewed humans as useful, but unremarkable. The newest members of the galactic community, humans were often seen as competent enough for basic tasks like hauling cargo or doing manual labor, but lacking the sophistication for anything truly important. 20 minutes later, as Elena was running final systems checks, her comm system crackled to life. "All vessels in sectors 7 through 12, this is Galactic Search and Rescue. We have a code black emergency. The diplomatic vessel Celestial Harmony has gone missing with 847 souls aboard, including the Zephyrian High Council." Elena sat up straighter. The High Council represented the leadership of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Their loss would be catastrophic for interstellar relations. Last known position was near the Sigma Drift asteroid field. All vessels capable of search operations are requested to assist immediately. Warning: the area is experiencing severe gravitational anomalies due to the recent collapse of a micro-black hole. Elena looked at her route. The Sigma Drift was only about 4 hours off her planned course. Her cargo run could wait. Medical supplies were important, but this was bigger than any single colony's needs. She was about to change course when another transmission came through. "Attention all vessels. Zephyrian Command has requested that only ships with Class A emergency response certification participate in search operations. Human vessels are advised to maintain current flight plans." Elena's jaw tightened. There it was again. The assumption that humans couldn't handle the complicated stuff. She'd been flying cargo routes for 8 years, had navigated asteroid fields, solar storms, and pirate territories. Her ship might not look like much, but the Iron Sparrow was tougher than most military vessels. More importantly, Elena knew something about the Sigma Drift that the fancy search and rescue teams might not. 3 years ago, she'd had to make an emergency landing on one of its asteroids when her hyperdrive had failed. She'd spent 2 weeks there waiting for rescue, and in that time, she'd mapped several hidden passages through the field that didn't show up on standard navigation charts. Against orders, Elena plotted a course for the Sigma Drift. The Galactic Council could complain about unauthorized humans later. Right now, 847 lives hung in the balance, and she might be the only pilot who knew the secret routes through that deadly maze of floating rocks. As the Iron Sparrow jumped to hyperspace, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to be a simple search and rescue operation. The gravitational anomalies mentioned in the report were new, and anything strong enough to affect ships in that region was probably strong enough to do a lot worse than just disable communications. She just hoped she wouldn't be too late to matter. 4 hours later, Elena dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sigma Drift. What she saw made her blood run cold. The asteroid field, normally a chaotic but predictable maze of floating rocks, had been completely transformed. Massive chunks of stone drifted in impossible spiral patterns, pulled by gravitational forces that defied everything she knew about physics. At the center of it all, A shimmering distortion in space marked where the micro-black hole had collapsed, leaving behind a gravitational nightmare that was slowly pulling the entire asteroid field into a tighter and tighter spiral. This is Captain Rodriguez of the civilian vessel Iron Sparrow. She broadcast on all emergency frequencies. I'm beginning search operations in the Sigma Drift. Any vessel receiving this transmission, please respond. Only static answered her. Elena fired up her sensors and began scanning the field. The gravitational anomalies were playing havoc with her instruments, but she could detect faint energy signatures scattered throughout the asteroids. Some might be wreckage, others could be survivors. She guided the Iron Sparrow into the outer edge of the field, using the secret passages she'd discovered years earlier. These routes took her between asteroids that had been gravitationally locked in stable positions for centuries, though now even they were slowly being pulled toward the center. After 30 minutes of careful navigation, her sensors picked up something that made her heart race, a massive energy signature partially hidden behind one of the larger asteroids. As she maneuvered around it, the celestial harmony came into view. The diplomatic vessel was magnificent even in distress. Nearly 2 kilometers long and shaped like a crystal formation, it had been designed to showcase Zephyrian engineering prowess. But now it was trapped, caught between 3 slowly rotating asteroids that formed a gravitational cage. The ship's hull showed signs of severe damage and its engines were dark. Celestial Harmony, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Iron Sparrow. Please respond. This time she got an answer. Captain Rodriguez, this is Ambassador Kethvar. We are surprised to hear a human voice in our current circumstances. I'm here to help. What's your status? Our engines are completely disabled, and our hull has been breached in 17 locations. We have lost 43 crew members and our life support systems are failing. The gravitational forces are slowly crushing our ship. Elena studied the situation. The Celestial Harmony was indeed trapped in a death spiral. The 3 asteroids around it were creating a gravitational well that was slowly compressing inward. In maybe 6 hours, the ship would be crushed completely. Ambassador, I'm reading multiple escape pod launches on my sensors. Some of your people got out? Yes, but they are scattered throughout the field. The pods have minimal life support and no navigation capability in these conditions. Even if we could rescue our trapped crew members, we have nowhere to go. Our ship cannot move, and the gravitational forces would destroy any rescue vessel that attempted to dock with us. Elena was quiet for a moment, studying her sensors. The Zephyrians were right. Any normal rescue attempt would be suicide. The gravitational forces around the Celestial Harmony were getting stronger by the hour, and even her smaller ship would be torn apart if she got too close. But Elena had an idea. A crazy, probably impossible idea that would require her to do something no pilot had ever attempted in a gravitational field this chaotic. Ambassador, how many people are still aboard your ship? 412 souls remain on the Celestial Harmony. Captain Rodriguez, while we appreciate your presence here, we must inform you that Zephyrian Command has dispatched a full rescue fleet. They will arrive in approximately 18 hours. You should depart immediately for your own safety. 18 hours. Elena looked at her readings again. In 18 hours, the gravitational compression would have turned the Celestial Harmony into a metal pancake. Ambassador, I don't think your ship has 18 hours. I'm reading massive structural stress throughout your hull. There was a long pause. You are correct. Our engineers estimate complete hull failure within 6 hours, possibly less. Elena made her decision. Then we're not waiting for the rescue fleet. I'm going to get you out of there. Captain Rodriguez, while we appreciate the sentiment, your cargo vessel cannot possibly handle the gravitational stresses involved in approaching our position. You would be committing suicide for no purpose. Elena smiled grimly as she began plotting an approach vector using the stable gravitational channel she'd mapped years ago. Ambassador, you might be surprised what a human cargo pilot can do when she puts her mind to it. Elena spent the next 2 hours in careful preparation. She couldn't simply fly to the Celestial Harmony and dock. The gravitational forces would tear both ships apart. Instead, she needed to be creative. She started by modifying her cargo bay. The medical supplies she'd been carrying were stored in standard emergency containers designed to survive crashes and explosions. More importantly, they had their own life support systems for transporting biological materials. With some creative rewiring, Elena converted them into makeshift escape pods. While she worked, she maintained contact with Ambassador Kethvar. I need you to start moving your people to the areas of your ship with the strongest structural integrity. We're going to have to do this in stages. Captain Rodriguez, you still have not explained how you intend to rescue us. Our ship is trapped in a gravitational well that increases in strength every hour. Elena wiped sweat from her forehead as she finished modifying the containers. I'm going to thread the needle, Ambassador. There are stable gravitational channels running through this field. Pathways where the gravitational forces from different asteroids cancel each other out. I mapped them years ago when I was stranded here. Impossible. Our sensors show no such channels. Your sensors are designed for normal space. These channels only exist because of the specific gravitational interactions in this field. They're like rivers of stable space flowing through a storm. Elena launched her first test probe, a modified cargo container equipped with sensors and a basic guidance system. She watched as it followed her calculated route, threading between asteroids and riding the gravitational currents toward the trapped ship. The container made it halfway before the gravitational forces shifted slightly, sending it tumbling into an asteroid. Elena frowned and recalculated her approach. Captain Rodriguez, came Kethavar's voice. We have just detected your probe's destruction. Please understand that we are grateful for your efforts, but this approach is not viable. One test doesn't make a pattern, Ambassador. I'm trying again. The second probe made it 3/4 of the way before being caught in a gravitational eddy that crushed it between two asteroids. The third probe actually reached the Celestial Harmony's position, but was destroyed when it tried to match the ship's rotation. Elena sat back in her pilot's chair, frustrated. The gravitational channels were there. She could see them on her instruments, but they were constantly shifting as the asteroids moved. What she needed was a way to predict those shifts. Then she had another idea. A human idea. Instead of trying to calculate the perfect route, she would improvise. Humans had a talent for thinking on their feet, for adapting to changing conditions in real time. The channels might be shifting, but Elena had years of experience reading gravitational currents and making split-second adjustments. She would pilot a rescue container manually, using her instincts and experience to navigate the changing channels in real time. Ambassador, I'm coming to get your people personally. I need you to prepare them for emergency evacuation. Captain Rodriguez, if your automated probes cannot survive the journey, how do you expect to? Elena was already suiting up in her emergency gear. Because I'm not a probe. I can think, adapt, and react to changing conditions. Sometimes the human touch makes all the difference. She climbed into the largest of her modified containers, which she'd equipped with basic navigation controls and maneuvering thrusters. It wasn't pretty, essentially a flying cargo box with life support, but it could carry 12 people in emergency conditions. This is insane, she muttered to herself as she launched from the Iron Sparrow. But insane is what humans do best. As soon as Elena entered the gravitational field, she could feel the forces trying to tear her makeshift rescue pod apart. The container groaned and flexed under the stress, but held together. More importantly, she could sense the gravitational currents flowing around her, the subtle pulls and pushes that mark the stable channels. She rode the currents like a surfer riding a wave, making constant micro-adjustments to her trajectory. When one channel collapsed, she smoothly transitioned to another. When unexpected eddies tried to drag her off course, she used them to gain speed toward her destination. It was like flying through a three-dimensional maze that was constantly changing its configuration. Her instruments screamed warnings as gravitational forces peaked and valleys appeared without warning. But Elena had spent her entire career navigating dangerous space, and her instincts had never failed her. 20 minutes later, her rescue pod matched velocity with the Celestial Harmony and docked with one of their emergency airlocks. Ambassador Kethavar was waiting for her when she cycled through the airlock. The Zephyrian's crystalline features were flickering with what Elena had learned to recognize as amazement. Captain Rodriguez, what you have just accomplished should have been impossible. Our computers calculated a 0.003% chance of survival for your approach. Elena grinned as she began helping Zephyrian crew members into her rescue pod. Ambassador, here's something about humans you might not know. We specialize in impossible. The first rescue run went perfectly. Elena successfully transported 12 Zephyrian diplomats back to the Iron Sparrow, navigating the shifting gravitational channels with an intuitive grace that left the aliens speechless. But as she prepared for her second trip, The situation took a dramatic turn for the worse. Captain Rodriguez, Kethvar's voice crackled over the comm with obvious strain. The gravitational compression has accelerated. Our structural engineers report critical failure beginning in the forward sections. We may have less than 3 hours before complete hull collapse. Elena checked her calculations. At 12 passengers per trip, she would need over 30 runs to evacuate everyone aboard the Celestial Harmony, even if she could maintain her current pace, which was unlikely as fatigue set in. She couldn't possibly save them all in time. She made a decision that would have horrified any safety inspector in the galaxy. Ambassador, I'm modifying my approach. I can fit more people in the rescue pod if we remove some of the safety equipment. Captain, we cannot ask you to compromise your own safety protocols for us. You're not asking. I'm volunteering. Elena was already stripping out redundant life support systems and emergency supplies. I can squeeze in 20 people per trip if we pack tight and share oxygen systems. On her second run, Elena discovered that the gravitational channels had shifted significantly. The stable pathways she'd used before were gone, replaced by new routes that required completely different approach vectors. What would have taken another pilot hours to recalculate, Elena adapted to on the fly, reading the gravitational currents like a road map written in forces only she could see. But the real challenge came on her third trip. As Elena approached the Celestial Harmony, a massive asteroid, easily the size of a city block, broke free from its orbital position and began tumbling directly toward the trapped ship. Ambassador, you've got incoming debris. ETA approximately 40 minutes. We see it, Captain. Our point defense systems are offline. There is no way to divert or destroy the asteroid. Elena studied the situation. The asteroid's trajectory would take it directly through the Celestial Harmony's position. Even if the gravitational forces didn't crush the ship first, this collision would finish the job, unless someone could change the asteroid's course. Elena looked at her rescue pod's specifications. It had been designed as a cargo container, equipped with industrial-grade maneuvering thrusters meant for pushing heavy loads in low-gravity environments. The thrusters weren't powerful enough to move an asteroid, but they might be enough to nudge it slightly. Ambassador, I'm going to try something. Keep evacuating people to the safest areas of your ship. Captain Rodriguez, what are you attempting? Elena didn't answer. She was too busy plotting an intercept course with the tumbling asteroid. Her plan was simple in concept, terrifyingly complex in execution. She would use her rescue pod like a tugboat, applying thrust at precisely the right moment and angle to alter the asteroid's rotation, just enough to send it past the Celestial Harmony instead of through it. The math was insane. She had to account for the asteroid's rotation, the changing gravitational fields, the exact thrust vectors needed, and the timing required to make contact at just the right point. One mistake would send her rescue pod tumbling into space, and probably doom everyone aboard the diplomatic vessel. Elena intercepted the asteroid with 35 minutes to spare. Up close, it was even more massive than she'd realized, a jagged chunk of rock and metal that massed easily 10,000 times more than her rescue pod. Trying to move it was like trying to redirect a mountain with a firecracker. But Elena had studied the asteroid's rotation during her approach, and she'd spotted a flaw in its structure, a deep crack running through one section that was already under stress from the rotation. If she could apply thrust at exactly the right moment, hitting the asteroid when the crack was facing her, she might create a fracture that would split the rock and change its trajectory. Elena positioned her rescue pod at the calculated intercept point and waited. The asteroid tumbled toward her in what seemed like slow motion, its massive bulk blotting out the stars. She could see the crack in its surface growing closer, rotating into position. Now, she whispered, and fired her thrusters at maximum power. The impact was tremendous. Elena was thrown against her restraints as the rescue pod shuddered under the stress. For a terrifying moment, she thought the container would break apart. But her targeting had been perfect. The concentrated thrust hit the asteroid's weakest point at exactly the right angle. The asteroid split along the crack line, breaking into two smaller pieces that tumbled away from each other. Either piece would hit the Celestial Harmony. Captain Rodriguez, came Kethvar's amazed voice. You have just accomplished something our best engineers would have considered physically impossible. How did you calculate the required thrust vectors so precisely? Elena wiped blood from her nose where the impact had thrown her forward. I didn't calculate anything, Ambassador. I just looked at the problem and figured out what needed to happen. Sometimes you don't need complex mathematics, you just need to understand how things work and trust your instincts. As she returned to continue the evacuation, Elena realized she'd just demonstrated something fundamentally human. While other species might have spent precious time running computer simulations and calculating probabilities, humans had a unique ability to look at a problem, understand its essential nature, and take action based on intuition and experience. It was this combination of knowledge, instinct, and sheer determination that made humans special in a galaxy full of species that were individually superior in almost every measurable way. By the time Elena completed her 8th rescue run, she was exhausted. She'd been flying for nearly 10 hours straight, navigating constantly shifting gravitational fields while pushing her makeshift rescue pod far beyond its design limits. Her hands were cramping from gripping the controls and every muscle in her body ached from the constant stress of high-gravity maneuvers. But she wasn't stopping. There were still over 200 people aboard the Celestial Harmony. Captain Rodriguez, Ambassador Kethavar's voice carried a tone Elena had never heard from a Zephyrian before. Something that sounded almost like respect. You must rest. You have been operating continuously for 10 hours in conditions that would exhaust our best pilots in 2. I'm fine, Ambassador, Elena replied, though she had to wipe sweat from her eyes to read her instruments clearly. How many more people can we move to the evacuation points? Approximately 150 souls remain in areas we can safely access. However, we have a new problem. The gravitational compression has caused a cascade failure in our life support systems. We are venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches, and our emergency containment fields are failing. Elena studied her sensors. The Celestial Harmony was indeed venting air and water into space, precious resources that couldn't be replaced. At the current rate of loss, the ship would become uninhabitable within 2 hours. What about emergency shelters? We have moved as many people as possible to our sealed emergency compartments, but these were only designed to hold 50 individuals each for short-term survival. We have over 200 people divided among 4 compartments that are already overcrowded and beginning to show stress fractures. Elena realized that time wasn't just running out, it was accelerating away from them. She needed to completely change her approach. Ambassador, I need technical specifications for your emergency compartments. Power requirements, life support systems, structural attachment points, everything. Captain, why do you require this information? Because I'm not just going to evacuate your people anymore. I'm going to take the compartments with me. There was a long silence on the comm channel. Captain Rodriguez, the emergency compartments are integral parts of our ship's structure. They cannot be detached. Everything can be detached if you apply the right amount of force in the right places, Elena replied, already studying the technical readouts Kethavar was transmitting. I just need to figure out how to do it without killing everyone inside. Elena spent the next 30 minutes developing the most audacious rescue plan in galactic history. Instead of continuing to ferry small groups of survivors, she would use her ship's industrial cutting, lasers and tractor beams to literally slice the emergency compartments out of the Celestial Harmony's hull and tow them to safety. The plan was ridiculously dangerous. The emergency compartments weren't designed to be independent spacecraft. They had no engines, minimal navigation systems, and would be completely dependent on her ship for life support during transport. If anything went wrong during the cutting operation, she could accidentally breach the compartments and kill everyone inside, but it was their only chance. Elena returned to the Iron Sparrow and began modifying her ship's systems. She rigged her cargo bay's tractor beam generators to work in parallel, creating a powerful enough field to move the massive emergency compartments. She reconfigured her industrial lasers for precision cutting, rather than bulk cargo operations. Most importantly, she jury-rigged her life support systems to extend emergency oxygen and power to external units. Ambassador, I need your people to prepare the emergency compartments for separation. Seal all internal connections, activate independent life support, and make sure everyone is secured for high-gravity maneuvers. Captain Rodriguez, our engineers have reviewed your plan. They calculate a 67% probability of catastrophic failure resulting in total loss of life. Elena smiled grimly as she guided the Iron Sparrow back toward the trapped ship. Ambassador, that's the best odds we've had all day. The first compartment separation was terrifying. Elena positioned her ship carefully, using her enhanced tractor beams to hold the compartment steady while her precision lasers cut through the structural connections. The Celestial Harmony's hull groaned and sparked as each cut separated vital support systems, but Elena's steady hand kept the damage localized. When the final connection was severed, the emergency compartment drifted free, held only by Elena's tractor beam. 50 Zephyrian civilians were now completely dependent on her ability to navigate them through the gravitational maze to safety. Elena had never felt pressure like this. Every decision, every course correction, every split-second adjustment meant the difference between life and death for 50 people who had trusted their lives to a human cargo pilot they'd never met. But as she began the journey back through the gravitational channels, Elena felt something she'd never experienced before. This wasn't just about proving that humans belonged in the galaxy, or showing that she was more than just a cargo pilot. This was about the fundamental human refusal to give up when lives were at stake. Other species might have calculated the odds and decided the risk was too great, but humans had a unique willingness to attempt the impossible when it was the right thing to do, regardless of the personal cost. As Elena successfully delivered the first emergency compartment to safe space, she realized she was demonstrating the most important thing about humanity. Not their technology, not their intelligence, but their absolute determination to save lives even when logic said it couldn't be done. Elena had successfully extracted 3 of the 4 emergency compartments when disaster struck. As she approached the Celestial Harmony for the final rescue, her sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. The gravitational anomaly at the center of the asteroid field was expanding. Ambassador, we have a problem. The gravitational distortion is growing stronger. It's pulling everything in the field toward the center, including your ship. Confirmed, Captain Rodriguez. Our scientists estimate that in approximately 30 minutes the gravitational forces will exceed our ship's structural limits. The Celestial Harmony will be torn apart. Elena looked at her readings. The final emergency compartment contained 62 people, the largest group of survivors, including several members of the Zephyrian High Council. But the compartment was located in the most damaged section of the ship, surrounded by unstable hull plating and twisted support structures that made extraction nearly impossible. Ambassador, the damage around the final compartment is too severe. I can't get a clean cut without risking a hull breach that would kill everyone inside. Captain, perhaps it is time to accept that not everyone can be saved. You have already rescued over 350 souls, more than anyone thought possible. No one would question your decision to withdraw to safety. Elena stared at her instruments. The logical choice was clear. Retreat now and save the people she'd already rescued rather than risk losing everyone in a futile attempt to save the final group. It was the rational decision that any competent commander would make. But Elena wasn't thinking like a commander. She was thinking like a human. Ambassador, I need you to do something for me. I need you to get your people to manually destabilize the structural supports around the final compartment. Captain, that would cause a catastrophic hull breach in that section of the ship. Exactly. If I can't cut the compartment free safely, then I'll use the hull breach to blow it free. The emergency compartment is designed to survive explosive decompression. The rest of the ship isn't. Captain Rodriguez, the explosion would occur while you are in close proximity. Your ship would almost certainly be caught in the debris field. Elena was already positioning the Iron Sparrow for the most dangerous maneuver of her career. Then I'll just have to be faster than the debris. She spent the next 15 minutes in careful preparation, positioning her ship exactly where she needed to be when the hull breach occurred. The plan was insane. When the Zephyrians destabilized their own ship's structure, it would create an explosion powerful enough to hurl the emergency compartment away from the Celestial Harmony at tremendous velocity. Elena would have only seconds to catch it with her tractor beam before it was either crushed by debris or pulled into the gravitational anomaly. All personnel in the final compartment. Prepare for explosive decompression, Elena announced. This is going to be rough. Captain, came Kethvar's voice, before you attempt this, you should know something. The individuals in the final compartment include High Counselor Vethran, who has spent the past 3 years arguing that humans should be removed from the Galactic Council for being too primitive and unpredictable. Elena almost laughed. Well, Ambassador, I guess we'll find out just how unpredictable humans can be. The explosion, when it came, was spectacular. The entire forward section of the Celestial Harmony blew apart in an expanding cloud of debris, atmosphere, and twisted metal. The emergency compartment was hurled away from the dying ship like a bullet fired from a massive gun. Elena was ready. As soon as the compartment cleared the debris field, she locked onto it with her tractor beam and began the most challenging piece of flying she'd ever attempted. The compartment was tumbling end over end, caught between the expanding debris field behind it and the growing gravitational anomaly ahead of it. Elena had to match its chaotic rotation, while simultaneously pulling it into a stable trajectory through the gravitational channels. For 3 terrifying minutes, Elena fought to control the spinning compartment as gravitational forces tried to tear it from her grasp. Her ship groaned under the stress. Warning lights flashed across her control panels and she could smell smoke from overloaded circuits. But gradually, she managed to stabilize the compartment's rotation and guide it toward safe space. When she finally docked the last emergency compartment with her ship, Elena collapsed in her pilot's chair, utterly exhausted. She'd been flying for 14 hours straight, navigating impossible gravitational fields while performing rescue operations that defied every safety protocol in the galaxy. "Captain Rodriguez," came a new voice over the comm, formal, precise, and carrying the unmistakable authority of high rank. "This is High Counselor Vethran. I wish to speak with you." Elena straightened in her chair, wondering if she was about to be formally reprimanded for violating orders and interfering with a Galactic Council operation. "I am here. High Counselor, Captain, 3 hours ago, I was preparing to present a proposal to remove humanity from the Galactic Council on the grounds that your species lacks the sophistication necessary for interstellar cooperation. I believed humans to be impulsive, unpredictable, and unsuited for complex operations requiring precision and planning." Elena winced. "And now, High Counselor? Now I realize that everything I thought I knew about humanity was wrong. What you have accomplished today, navigating impossible gravitational fields, improvising solutions to problems our best engineers declared unsolvable, and risking your life repeatedly to save people you had never met, this represents something we have not seen before in the galaxy." Elena wasn't sure how to respond to that. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No, Captain Rodriguez. You were demonstrating something uniquely human, the refusal to accept that a problem cannot be solved when lives are at stake. Other species calculate odds and make logical decisions based on probability of success. Humans seem to make decisions based on what is right, regardless of the odds." As Elena began the journey back to the orbital station with over 400 rescued survivors, she realized that she'd done more than save lives today. She'd shown the galaxy what humans were really capable of when they refused to give up. 6 months later, Elena sat in the galactic capital's most prestigious conference hall, wearing a formal dress uniform that felt completely foreign after years in cargo pilot coveralls. Around her, representatives from dozens of alien species filled the massive amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a constant background hum of clicks, whistles, musical tones, and electromagnetic pulses. She was here for the official inquiry into the Sigma Drift incident, a formal review of her actions that would determine whether she had violated Galactic Council protocols by ignoring direct orders and conducting unauthorized rescue operations. High Counselor Vethran approached the speaker's platform, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights in complex patterns. As one of the most senior members of the Galactic Council, his words would carry enormous weight in determining Elena's fate. "Honored representatives," he began, his musical voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. 6 months ago, Captain Elena Rodriguez, a human cargo pilot, violated direct orders from Galactic Search and Rescue Command. She entered a restricted emergency zone without proper authorization, operated equipment beyond its certified safety parameters, and conducted rescue operations using procedures that had never been tested or approved. Elena tried to keep her expression neutral, but her heart was sinking. When the formal charges were read like that, her actions sounded reckless and irresponsible. "By all conventional measures," Vethran continued, "Captain Rodriguez should be facing severe sanctions for her actions. However, the results of those actions force us to reconsider our understanding of what constitutes proper emergency response. Procedures." The High Counselor activated a holographic display showing the Sigma Drift incident. When the diplomatic vessel Celestial Harmony became trapped in an impossible gravitational situation, our best computer models calculated a 0.003% probability of successful rescue. Our most advanced rescue vessels were 18 hours away, far too late to prevent the loss of all 847 souls aboard. The display showed Elena's battered cargo ship entering the asteroid field. Captain Rodriguez ignored these calculations. Using knowledge gained from personal experience, intuitive understanding of gravitational mechanics, and what can only be described as improvised engineering genius, she accomplished what our best minds declared impossible. Elena watched as the hologram replayed her rescue operations, threading the gravitational channels, splitting the asteroid, extracting the emergency compartments. Seeing it from this perspective, even she was amazed by what she'd accomplished. In 14 hours of continuous operation, Captain Rodriguez successfully evacuated 412 individuals from certain death, using a cargo vessel that was never designed for such operations and employing techniques that existed nowhere in our standard procedures manuals. Vethran turned to face Elena directly. "Captain Rodriguez, will you please stand?" Elena rose, feeling the attention of hundreds of alien representatives focused on her. "Captain, your actions during the Sigma Drift incident have fundamentally changed how the Galactic Council views human capabilities. We have learned that while humans may lack some of the specialized abilities possessed by other species, you possess something equally valuable: the ability to look at an impossible situation and refuse to accept that it cannot be solved." The High Counselor's features shifted into what Elena had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of a smile. "Therefore, it is the unanimous decision of this council that no sanctions will be imposed for your violation of protocols. Instead, the council formally recognizes that sometimes the best solution to an unprecedented problem is to ignore established procedures and trust in individual judgment and initiative." Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her, but Vethran wasn't finished. Furthermore, the council has voted to establish the Rodriguez Protocol, AI, new set of emergency response guidelines that authorize individual ship commanders to deviate from standard procedures when faced with situations where conventional approaches have been deemed insufficient. The chamber erupted in the various sounds different species made to express approval: whistles, clicks, harmonic tones, and electromagnetic bursts that Elena's translator rendered as applause. Additionally, Vethran continued when the noise died down, the council is pleased to offer Captain Rodriguez a position as Director of Unconventional Emergency Response, a new department tasked with developing innovative solutions to rescue situations that defy traditional approaches. Elena was speechless. In the space of a few minutes, she'd gone from facing potential exile from space to being offered one of the most important positions in galactic emergency services. "High Counselor," she finally managed. "I'm honored by the offer, but I should point out that I'm just a cargo pilot. I don't have formal training in emergency response or crisis management." Vethran's features flickered with what Elena now recognized as amusement. Captain Rodriguez, 6 months ago, the most advanced rescue fleet in the galaxy, was 18 hours away from a disaster site, equipped with the most sophisticated technology and the most thoroughly trained personnel available. You were 4 hours away with a cargo ship and a stubborn refusal to accept that people were going to die on your watch. He gestured toward the holographic display still showing her rescue operations. "Formal training teaches us what should be possible. You showed us that humans have a unique gift for making the impossible happen when it matters most. The galaxy needs that gift." As Elena left the council chamber that day, she realized that everything had changed. She was no longer just a cargo pilot in the eyes of the galactic community. She had become something new, a symbol of humanity's greatest strength. It wasn't their technology that made humans special, or their intelligence, or their physical capabilities. It was their absolute refusal to give up when lives were at stake, their willingness to attempt the impossible when it was the right thing to do, and their unique ability to find solutions that existed outside the boundaries of conventional thinking. As she walked through the galactic capital's corridors, Elena could see the change in how other species looked at her, and by extension at all humans. There was a new respect there, an acknowledgement that these newest members of the galactic community brought something unique and valuable to the table. They brought the human spirit. Stubborn, determined, and utterly unwilling to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable as long as people needed help. Elena smiled as she headed back to her ship. She had a feeling that her days as a simple cargo pilot were over, but her days of proving what humans could accomplish were just beginning.